Hey, what's up guys, how's it going? It's a nice sunny day today, so I thought I would sit out this morning and just record this short video talking about something that I find very, very interesting, which is the topic of discipline. And I'm not probably going to be talking about it in the way that you might imagine. So often in like the Western world, the term discipline is like thought of as forcing yourself to kind of do something that you don't want to do against your will, and like, you know, grimming and bearing it basically, and just kind of making yourself do it for the greater good or whatever. But I do think it goes a lot beyond that. You have to kind of start with discipline, but eventually you can work yourself into a place where the things that were once difficult can become easy. And I think this is why a lot of people struggle to kind of like better themselves, and it's so easy to stay in their comfort zone. And that's that people will, it's like their perception of doing something uncomfortable or difficult outweighs their sort of like expectation of what that will do for them, and so they stay in that comfort zone. Now, something that I always notice is when I, for instance, go into like a store or a supermarket or something, is you see all these people kind of like that are not looking too great. They look like exhausted and pretty miserable, and they're piling their shopping carts with all this processed food and all this stuff that's just kind of like ruining their bodies and making them more miserable and things as well. And if you get a chance to speak to those people, you can really get a kind of insight into their thinking process and how their mind sort of works. They often say these things kind of like when thinking about sort of the way you might do something, because I like to be really healthy and like to eat really healthy, and even if I'm going out somewhere, I'll like take food with me and things like that. And often if people see that, who you're, you know, meeting with that day, they might comment on it and say something like, oh, that's super healthy and things like, and that's fair enough. But then you do get some people that almost, it's as if they're almost offended by what you're doing basically, or just the presence of your kind of attempt to be better within yourself, and not rubbing it in somebody's face, but, you know, just trying to be better yourself. And they might say something like, oh yeah, like, that's well and good, but you know, I like to enjoy my life and stuff. And what they mean by that is basically, I think it's too difficult to be kind of the way you are, and so I'm just going to say that I like to enjoy things like, you know, drinking loads of alcohol and things, or eating terrible foods, in order to basically kind of feel better about their lives. And I do think, like, not to become too psychologically in depth, but I do believe that a big reason for that is it's almost like they're trying to kind of numb themselves from a lifestyle and a life that they're not very happy with. And it's not a prospect or a possibility to them to become better or to change things, because a lot of people are in a kind of victim consciousness. And so in order to kind of remedy that, rather than make changes, they will just kind of numb, if that makes sense, and they'll just kind of try to feel better about their current life without trying to change it. And the kind of interesting thing about that is as well, though, is like when you do talk to those type of people, it's like, if that was the case and what they were saying was true, you'd imagine that they might be like the example of happiness. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I like to enjoy my life and things. But as I mentioned earlier, looking at those people, when you observe them in like a supermarket, and I'm certainly, before I say this, I'm certainly not trying to be on some like pedestal or high horse, because I've had my own struggles, as I've spoken about before, with things like alcohol. I had quite like a bad drinking problem at one time, and it is something that's kind of like reared its head again over the years, so I completely understand why people do that. But I think when you, like I say, going back to the point, when you do see those people, it's like you'd imagine they'd be the example of happiness, but really they actually look more miserable than most other people, and kind of like they look tired and almost like they're kind of plodding along and just getting through, rather than really kind of like bettering themselves. Now, the way that relates to obviously what I'm saying about discipline is it's their perception of what it would take to be disciplined, say to eat healthy, or to, you know, live a better lifestyle, make changes into their life that they don't think are possible. Their perception of what it would take to do that is a lot higher than, say, the discomfort that they're currently living, because there is obviously a level of discomfort, because if not, and whether they're aware or conscious of it or not is another thing, but there is, because if there wasn't, they wouldn't have to do those things, and they would kind of naturally gravitate to what, you know, makes the heart sing, pretty much. In my opinion, and I've seen other people speak about this as well, is that paradoxically, discipline actually leads to freedom. So it sounds, the reason it's paradoxical obviously is because it kind of seems as if you're doing something that you don't want, which is kind of the opposite of freedom in most people's minds. However, that kind of delayed gratification and wanting something instantly and working towards something is actually what brings a much greater freedom eventually, rather than just kind of going for like quick fixes and things like that, you know, terrible stimulating food or alcohol or whatever, drugs, you know, the list of people's vices are just endless. But really it's kind of all, I think, for the same type of reason. But regardless of that, back to the point, I think in order to work towards something that is for a greater good, or like a vision you have, is what leads to kind of true fulfillment in life, and not just things that you can see here and now and you're trying to just jump on and feel good in the moment kind of thing. Having a vision of something and like working towards it day by day, and if that means, you know, doing something that is a little bit uncomfortable, it's not going to kill you, you're just going to be a little bit uncomfortable. So it's like we have a big aversion to discomfort in society nowadays, especially, you know, everything in the media and stuff is promoted as like quick fixes, like, oh, you've got this problem, take this pill, if you've got this, do this and your problems will be vanished. But really that just doesn't exist. I think we need to kind of re-examine the way we look at the word discipline, or the perception of what it really means, because in my opinion it's not forcing yourself to do something that you hate and being miserable while you're doing it. That's like what everyone thinks of when they're, you know, say for somebody who's not healthy, for instance, or doesn't like working out, and they think of going to the gym or going for a run or something like that. It's like huge discomfort, way more painful than just remaining unhealthy and having health problems, because if not, that balance would outweigh itself and they would do something about it. It's not so much that you don't want to do the thing, because if people were really honest with themselves, like, who doesn't want to be healthy, who doesn't want to be in good shape, or, you know, excel in a certain skill? And obviously my content's about martial arts, so a lot of the things I do are all in aid of improving that. So I don't always want to train, you know what I mean? I don't always want to go to the gym and things, but my vision of what I would want to do is strong enough to kind of pull me through, and it's not that painful, even if I am kind of like not feeling it that day or something. And I'm not talking about forcing yourself to go when you're exhausted and achy and things. That's pretty much like, I covered that in the last video I made, just about, you know, about making yourself train when you're achy and stuff. That's a different topic. But I think, you know, when you just got a lot of like mental noise and you don't want to do something, it's like reconnecting to that vision. So as mentioned, it's not about doing something you hate and forcing yourself to do it. It's more about doing the things that you know are going to work towards that goal, because if you're really honest about what you would like to do or what you'd like to achieve and things, and then about the things that are going to get you there, you're not going to always want to do them. And if you're waiting to feel confident or waiting to feel ready, then that's never going to happen really, and time will go by and you'll look back and you'll start to think like, oh no, you know, this much time's gone by. If I started then, I'd be in a way better position now. And unfortunately, it's not just as simple as that either, because when you don't do the things you want to do, you actually kind of like lose more confidence. And I do think like your self-confidence erodes even more. So then the longer you wait, the older you get, the harder it is to actually make a change. And it's almost kind of like over time, you see how people become encased in this kind of like bubble of low self-esteem and low self-confidence, to where they don't feel that they can break out. And that's where, going back to the point earlier, is where they will just kind of succumb to these numbing behaviours, because they're just trying to feel good now and they've kind of given up on their dreams. And I feel like that is a really sad state of affairs, and you know, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And that's why I like to talk about these kinds of things, because hopefully it can make somebody, you know, give somebody maybe a bit of a wake-up call, or help them to examine their own behaviour and things, and decide like, is this what I want for my life, you know? So ways that have helped me to kind of do this for myself is like going back to when I was really young and I started training as a kid. Like I was obviously really into kind of superheroes and things and all of these other things, and these films I watched and stuff were super inspiring to me. And because as children we don't really have like critical thinking, we just kind of like go with the way we feel and things. You're not filtering your kind of like impulses to go in a certain direction through what we call like rational thinking or being realistic, which is often just kind of like pressure to conform, in all honesty. Because if you look around you, all the people that we do celebrate in society and, you know, that have done great things, all really kind of went against the grain and sort of expressed themselves in the way they wanted to. When I was young, when I went out and trained, I kind of did this unconsciously in a sense, a bit like an unconscious strategy. I would just go out and I would almost like believe I was those characters with such a strong vision and kind of no filter of rationale. I'd believe I was those people in the films or these superheroes and stuff, and I would train and do all these things, and that kind of really helped me to improve so kind of effortlessly in a sense. Now obviously you're not going to be able to do that if you're not like 10 years old anymore, which I'm sure most people who are watching this video are not, but you can kind of take on that sort of childlike energy now and imagine again and kind of like dream again of like what you want to do and who you want to be, because it is possible for you to do that. You don't have to accept your kind of lot in life, if that makes sense. And so ways to do that is, instead of trying to think of like, oh, I must force myself to do this thing, is just take some time and kind of like write out a kind of vision or a dream of like who you want to be, and don't filter it through where you're currently at the moment, because really like reality is just effect. It's not actually a cause. Like, we kind of have that backwards. It's usually like the cause of reality, or it's like the situation causes the person's reaction and emotions, but really it's the opposite way around. So anything can be changed if you're able to change your thinking and the way you perceive yourself. But it's not just like think positive. The way real change happens is on a real identity level, where the person doesn't even see themselves in the same way they used to, or they see themselves as a completely different person. And ways to do that is things like visualization, you know, meditation and things. And basically a lot of these things, like meditation for instance, is not some kind of mystical thing that people do on a mountaintop in ancient times. It's like the function of it in terms of this, it quietens the mind, and it quietens out the kind of what we think is rational but isn't actually rational. It's kind of like we're very, very much emotional creatures. And it quietens that down, and it kind of lets the true essence of the person out. So meditation's a great tool. Visualization, kind of seeing yourself and feeling the emotions of the person you want to be, and just essentially like reminding yourself of that person all the time. Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich is a very, very well-known classic book, and his thing is the definite chief aim, which is to basically have a really strong intention towards something, like a burning desire he calls it. And pretty much the whole book is like, you just keep reminding yourself of that and working towards that, keep reminding yourself of it, because what tends to happen in the whole discipline field is when you're forcing yourself to do something, you're able to make a little bit of progress for a while, but inevitably the old kind of personality is going to come back in, and you're going to sink back into old habits again and fall off. And it takes a real change of identity and attitude to really make changes last and things. But it is possible if you want to do it badly enough. And the first thing that you need to do is have that desire to change, because without that, when things get hard, because they inevitably will, you're going to kind of go back to how you were. And when they do get hard though, it's not about pushing against it and resisting it, because that's just creating more pressure in the situation. And you know, that old saying of what you resist persists is very much true. It's about kind of like accepting it and reminding yourself of the vision. So it's not, no, I'm not going to listen to that, and pushing it away. That's just kind of like repression, and it won't go away. It's reminding yourself of that vision and kind of like realigning yourself to that course and going back onto it, if that makes sense. You know, motivation is finite. It's not something that's going to last forever, and if you're just waiting for that, then you're gonna be on like you're gonna do a load of false starts basically, and you'll start to do something, start to do something and stop. And that's just a way to basically like make no progress. So have a think about some of these things. If you would like to know some more kind of methods or kind of breakdowns and things of how you can go about doing this, because really, like, I know this isn't so much a video about pure martial arts stuff like I'm usually doing, but this stuff is actually what allows you to really go to another level. Like, everyone always wants tactics and things, you know, like what exercises can I do, I need to stretch and stuff, but without this stuff you won't do any of the things you need to do. So you need to really see yourself as that person and believe it's possible, have faith before anything else can happen, because having tactics and just trying to shove them on like a poor personality or a bad attitude is just going to result in nothing really. These types of topics for me are actually something I find very, very interesting, and I've been doing like a lot of research over, you know, many years and implementing things for myself. So if you'd like to know more about this type of stuff, obviously as well as kind of pure physical training advice, just let me know and I can make some more videos about this type of stuff. Like, I don't like the word mindset exactly, it's a little bit deeper than that, but we'll use the word for now to kind of encompass this type of stuff, because like I've mentioned, it is the starting point for everything else, and if you haven't got it, then any tactics are just going to be useless. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.